Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCullum, and today I want to talk about what it takes to make a successful pistol, or rather, what you can do to make a pistol fail as a design. Because if you want to make something really successful, something like a Colt 1903 or the iconic Glock 17, you have to do a lot of things right. There's a bit of luck involved, but there's also quite a lot of skill. And today what I want to do is look at a couple of different ways that, well, you can destroy a pistol project before it ever gets off the ground, or even after it has gotten off the ground. You're still not safe then, you can still mess it up. So I suppose the first thing to think about here is what makes a good pistol? Well, that really depends on what your audience is looking for. What are you trying to accomplish with the gun? I think perhaps the best example of a terrible gun would be the Liberator pistol, and yet the Liberator was actually extremely successful, or at least reasonably successful, for its intended goal, which was to make an extremely inexpensive gun that could be produced by the, well, literally hundreds of thousands, and dropped to resistance fighters during World War II. Now, it didn't quite end up getting used to the extent that it could have, but that comes down to largely politics. This met its design criteria, and it met them pretty well. It was manufactured in huge numbers. It's not a failure, but it's probably not the gun that you need for most of the things that you would think about having a gun for. So there's our first criteria. If you're going to make a successful pistol, it needs to be something that meets a demand that people actually have. This is pretty basic market economics here. If you design an answer to a question that nobody's asking, well, not a lot of people are going to pay you for it. Case in point, the Zip 22. This is honestly still a baffling gun to me. The amount of money and time and effort and legacy that was destroyed in the development of the Zip 22 is still mind-blowing to me. But this is a perfect example of a gun that does not answer any question or any need that anybody had actually expressed. It's a piece of junk. I get people asking me about this, like, well, what if you took this and you made the bolt out of metal instead of plastic? Would it have worked then? The answer is, it doesn't matter. It still would have been a failure because nobody wants this thing. But that's a pretty extreme example, and we don't have to go nearly that far. We can look at some historical examples of failed pistols, like, for example, the Spanish Holoar with its palanca, single hand cocking lever on the side. There we go. That's pretty cool. And the gun is well engineered. It's well built. It works. It does everything it's supposed to. The problem is nobody really needed it. And so it really definitely falls into the category of failure today. However, as are many interesting failures, it's a cool piece for collectors. And you'll see these actually having garnered a fair amount of value on the collector's market. There aren't a lot of them around, but they're neat and people want them now. Not for the original design, not for the original design purpose. Nobody's buying this thing as an actual cavalry combat handgun, but they are buying it as a cool collector. There are, of course, some modern examples of this same sort of problem of building a gun that's an answer to a question that nobody asked, like full conceal. Someone had the neat idea to design, well, to take a Glock 19 and convert it such that it could fold up like so. And the idea was this would be super easy to carry just about anywhere, but it would be a full-sized pistol instead of a little pocket micro gun. And I think the idea was you could like stick this into like the cargo pockets of a pair of pants, and they would do it kind of disappear. It'd carry well. It certainly doesn't have the profile of a gun when it's inside a pocket. The problem was, if you can carry this, you can pretty much carry, you have a lot of other options for carrying a gun that don't involve having cut the frame off and turned it into a folding gun. So as a folding gun, it's pretty cool. And there are people who like them, like me. I think it's a neat thing to have, but not enough people actually wanted this for its intended purpose to purchase it, not enough of them to justify the cost of developing and making it. And so the company went out of business not that long after it came into business. But it's a gun that is extremely well engineered. It's well designed. It does everything it's supposed to. It's just nobody wanted that. Nobody wanted that. But let's say you do come up with a good design, something that is going to be better at filling the role of a handgun than other options people have, something that will, in fact, drive demand. The problem is now you have to manufacture it well. I suppose that's probably kind of self-evident, but there have been more than a few pistols that were let down at this stage. An excellent example would be the South African Mamba. This was basically designed on a cocktail napkin by a couple of serious competitive shooters in Rhodesia who basically came up with all the features they wanted in a really good pistol, something that would do everything and do it all really well. By the way, similar example would be the Bren 10, although I don't have an example of one of those here to show you. Now the problem is the Mamba got messed up by production. So it had a double action, single action trigger, had a good high capacity for the time magazine. It was all stainless steel. It was going to be corrosion resistant. It was going to be very durable. It was going to have no stamped parts in it whatsoever. Like all really cool ideas, but then they end up unable to actually manufacture it effectively. The guy in charge of the engineering, the lead technical guy, messes up the heat treating, and so they have huge problems with the heat treating. They have problems with galling. They have a lot of technical problems because it was developed by people who are really good at shooting, but not so great at the engineering involved. And this can go a step farther. If you take a design that is actually a good design, that has been effective, but then you manufacture it badly, I'm looking at you, Rogak, this is going to fail too, because even if people like the concept, the gun then has to actually work effectively. This is another stainless steel. There's something about stainless steel automatics from the 70s and 80s that an awful lot of them were just not very good. The Rogak here, I have a whole separate video on the Rogak. This is an unlicensed, very poorly made aftermarket copy of the Steyr GB, which is a pistol that's quite good. Now, it's not a pistol that does things that everybody wants. It's not a concealed carry gun. It was a serious contender for Austrian military service pistol. This is a serious contender for paperweight in the garbage can. I have one more example here of something that could have been good. Like, this is a little questionable on both levels. It's the remake of Remington's Model 51. This is the R51, and where the original was in .380 caliber, primarily, these were in 9 Parabellum. The original used a rather unorthodox locking system to avoid patent issues at the time. The R51 appears to have been developed entirely out of nostalgia. Like, hey, we did that cool pistol back when, and we haven't really done a whole lot of much note and interest in a long time. Let's remake that old pistol, but for a modern carry market. And it's a very narrow, flat pistol. It's not a terrible gun for carry, although by today's standards now, the capacity is rather low. It's a single stack magazine. Guns like SIG's P365 have really thrown a wrench into the works for anybody trying to make compact carry guns. Like, that's become a high bar to clear. At any rate, Remington took a design that was good enough. People were excited about it. The combination of having practical, some practical benefits to the pistol, as well as the historical aspects, the reminiscent aspects of it being a remake of a historical design, that was working for them until engineering and, in addition, quality control let them down, because these things just did not work. Big problem. Definitely another example of a failed pistol. So once you can get past that hurdle, if you can design a gun that actually does something better than other pistols available at the time, like, for example, being cheaper and lighter and just very simple, and you can actually produce it effectively, you do the proper engineering, the gun actually works as designed, it's reliable, and then you get it into the marketplace, you can still screw it up by doing any number of other things accidentally. For example, if your engineering is good, but your QC is bad, you might run into the situation that Caracal found themselves in, where they were the absolute darling of SHOT Show. They made a pistol that was, in fact, pretty darn good. It was handy, it feels nice, it's light, it was very cheap, but their QC had an issue with heat treating, and the Caracal C slides had a tendency to break in the middle and launch back at their shooters' faces, and so they recalled essentially every one of the pistols. They're back on the market now, but man, they had a really good thing going, and that one little hiccup, one little tiny mistake, which happens to involve parts of the pistol flying off, which is a bad thing, that can tank a project that had a whole lot of time and money invested in it and was otherwise pretty darn good. Probably the other modern recent classic example of this, some of you will probably have been expecting this to come out in this video as well, the Hudson H9, another gun, the darling of SHOT Show, highly anticipated. I still believe it's a really nice pistol. It did everything it was supposed to. It did things that made it a good choice to purchase. It was a little more expensive than a lot of people would have liked when it came out, but then you get into a catastrophic marketing problem where they didn't have enough cash. They were a little on edge with cash flow as it was, and then they go and announce at SHOT Show an improved model, specifically the aluminum framed model that's going to be just as good shooting as the standard steel gun, but it's going to weigh less. And all of a sudden, everybody who had been considering spending $1,200 on a Hudson H9 decided, I'm just going to wait for the aluminum frame version. Their cash flow dried up, and the company went bankrupt before it had the opportunity to actually launch that aluminum framed gun and make money on it. So again, an example, they did all sorts of things right. Could they have done some stuff better? Yeah, they could have had more effective, more efficient production. There are some changes they could have made to the design, but this was a good pistol and would have been a successful pistol had they not shot themselves in the foot, so to speak, with marketing. Well, there you go, guys. If you want to make the world's next super popular, super effective, super successful handgun, you have a lot of work ahead of you. And the first step is make sure that what you're designing actually is going to do something better, something more, something better than the other options currently out there on the market. I regularly get emails from people who are excited to show me new gun ideas that they want to bring to market. And the first question I always have to ask is, why would someone buy that? Well, buy that instead of buying something like this. What does your design do better than the things people can already get? Because just having a gun that's neat and different, really cool, future collectors will appreciate you, but your own bank account and your business partners, if you have any, will not, because this is not the way to make a successful new pistol. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, a little bit rambly today, but I thought it'd be an interesting topic to talk about. So thanks for watching.